this time here and dedicated to the broken, I want to talk to you for a moment. You see, I've been on this Christ walk for a good minute, you know. And I understand that there are some who got the thing figured out and down pat. But for the rest of us, every now and then, you know, life happens. And we need to simplify a little bit. This is the reason for this song. And I hope you hear my heart on it.
Someone the future knows. I really have to see the things that can be said. I don't need it now. Like the church now or another crowd new. I'm not looking for another goosebumps sermon or a word that leaves me passed out on the floor.
Listen to the words, y'all.
My basic needs are really very simple to know you love me.
How many of us feel like that? What it really means, y'all.
You like me. It's simple, I know, please forgive me for asking. But life can be so confusing. So I lift up my hand like a child to the Father to hear it one more time. That I am yours. Thank you,
Greetings, 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 greetings. I am King Clifford Jefferson, a senator of God for the fifth counterband Jew, son of folk, ruler of Jerusalem. It is February the 8th, 2026, which is equivalent to the birth year 2976. I greet you in the name of King Edgar the Peaceful, which is our vicar of Christ, or Jesus Christ. I greet you in the name of all those who have come before me, all those who will precede me. I greet you in the name of my Queen Sister Godwinson from the house of Godwinson. I greet you in the name of all of you. It's a beautiful day to be here. One second. Sorry about that. Once again, I greet you in the name of my Queen Sister Godwinson from the house of Godwinson. I greet you in the name of all those who have come before me, all those who will precede me. I greet you in the name of all the children, all those who descend on all their progenitors and inheritors of the Anglo-Saxon Berbers. This is part 6 of What Remains After the System Collapse, part 6, Potential Inheritors. Once again, What Remains of the System When It Collapsed, part 6 for Potential Inheritors. This is a very, very important lessons, which are come down from the previous ones that I just did, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and part 5. So it's very important that you watch those particular lessons because they lay the groundwork for what's going to be discussed today in regards to the potential inheritors based upon not a belief, not based upon a philosophy, not based upon the theology, but based upon what the law says. All right, you must understand that this is a new day and time now, and we must take our place as the more scientific America always say in the affairs of men. And when we say men, we're talking about that of the secular world. So as always, I have a couple of videos from different platforms that I'm going to show you. I'm going to take about 2 or 3 minutes to play a little bit of each of them. And the reason I'm going to do that because right now you as a people have a choice to make of the capacity in which you're using at this point in time in regards to your right of an inheritance, all right, based upon the capacity. Because without the capacity, you don't have the authority to use a property, okay, without the capacity. I'm talking about natural people, entities, or whatever, okay? Without the capacity, you don't have the authority to have the use of land consistent with the capacity to use land. That's very important in understanding in these days and time, especially in regards to personal property, okay? Personal property, tangible and intangible, corporeal and incorporeal. If you don't understand it from this standing point, which I'm giving to you or delivering unto you today, then you will never get that understanding because it's all about the structural framework that we're subject to, which we call the administrative system, which is called the government. So I'm going to be precise. I'm going to speak slow so each and every one of you can hear me so that you can make a a comprehensive and a competent choice about how you're going to move forward from this day and point. All right. So with that, let's get started with this marvelous lecture. Okay, I'm gonna play at least 3 minutes of each video. Okay, I'm gonna save the best for last though. All right, because the majority of the videos that I'm going to show, which is going to be 3 minutes, there are many more out there that fit the same description, and it only shows their capacity. Okay, and most of their capacity in which the form consists of is a assumption or a presumption. All right, has nothing to do with law. Okay, nothing to do with equitable relief. It's very important to understand that in part 6, you get the idea in part 1 through 5, but part 6 is very important that you pay attention to what's being said. So let's get started. Let's start here. Now, these are different platforms that we have uh, uh, in the community, all right? Not just in our community, but communities worldwide, okay? These are some of the avenues or venues that people look for to redress their concerns, okay? No matter what the concern is, it all denotes to uh, the 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 source of where you go, all right? Because the source sets your capacity, okay? So I'm only going to spend about 2 or 3 minutes on each video, all right? Because of the sake of the detailed lesson that I had prepared for you, okay? So let's get started. Let's start with Canaanite Moors, Canaanland Moors. Is not to degrade them or put them down. This whole lesson is based upon, do you have the authority based upon your argument, especially in regards to property? Do you have that capacity? I hope you do. But this lesson is about, do you have the capacity in regards to your interests, in regards to your right in lieu of an inheritance, which we have here in North America called land. And then anything that sits upon that land, can you justify that legally in a court of law? Okay? Because we live in a secular world now. All right? It's very important to understand that most of the platforms I'm going to show you don't provide legal remedy. Okay? And when we say legal remedy, it's one specific remedy that we seek, that majority of people seek in regards to their understanding. And that's either reparations, damages, freedom, etc. All right? They come in all folds. All right? These are the things that people seek. And the only way you can seek these things is in 3 platforms: the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. And the latter is the majority of where most of our concerns go to. All right? This would be the court system. All right? So with that, let's get started. I'm going to play 2 minutes of each clip.
So we're back. We got a little time. Because you realize that there's a wave right now.
wave. And there's this online thing. This online thing. This is the wave. When we came into this info, so then in 95 is when started taking it actually serious, knowing something more than what I've been told, doing some research and studying and all that. Right. To get to about 2006, 2005, 2006, to find out about Moors and that we're Moors and all that. And then 2008, it was official. 2008, this is what it is. We're Moors, and I'm not even hearing anything from anybody else because I already knew everybody from every kind of school of thought that you could think of that knew that we were Moors, and they weren't debating me about it. So I'm riding with those few faithful Moors who said, beyond the school of thought BS, whenever I see you, it's Islam, because I already know what's up. So early out in this, 2009, 2010, just go do your research. Just do your research on Kudro L, Toronto, and see what comes up.
Okay, so this is from the Kingdom Land Moors, the Moors Scientific of America. He's talking about his capacity, okay? Your capacity is where your authority arises from, okay? Very important to understand that. And the origin of what he's speaking about stems from his belief, his assumption, okay? His presumption about what he assumes to be a fact, okay? We're not in a court of law, though. We're not in a court of law. This is very important that we understand it from that perspective, because all this is based upon their mission. What is their mission? All right? What is their purpose and intent for the Moorish Scientific of America? All right? Those who are viewers of the Moorish Scientific of America or our members, you need to really understand your mission, and those who are in the capacity, under the authority, governed by the mission, not their personal agendas, not their personal wants, but the purpose of the mission. Very important. That's one. Let's go to another one. That's 146, so we'll stop at 148. Okay, this is another platform. We're talking about capacity, all right? Your capacity as authorized by whatever what gave you the authority to be in that capacity, all right? Especially in regards to some type of interest and property, whether that interest and property is based upon a belief, a philosophy, a theology, all right? Where is that capacity in modern day? How is it being utilized that gives you authority to even make a claim? And you don't have a claim in any property if there's no record of it. You must have a record, okay? And just because it's on the record in lieu of an interest or property, that's based upon your capacity, Okay? So let's read about this, see what they're talking about.
I don't see what the issue is. I don't see what the
Right, man. Yeah, man. So I hear you. I wrote down a few questions myself.
Okay.
And the first, let's get right to it.
149,
We're
let's
talking
start.
about FBA,
Okay.
Foundation of Black Americans, and we want to see where this go. First of all, but I want to ask you, what do FBA believe? What is FBA? Let's start there.
From what I've learned,
150 would stop.
FBA stands for Foundational Black Americans. And so what I've learned up until this point, because I was confused about it too, because you immediately, when you see acronyms, you think movement. I know that's what I thought. So I thought FBA was a movement. What I've learned is that FBA is not a movement. FBA doesn't have no morals, doesn't have no rules, doesn't have no guidelines. It's essentially, instead of calling yourself African American, you call yourself Foundational Black American. That's what it is. So it's almost nothing. You know what I do like about it? You know what I do want to put this out? I'm just thankful that they hate Africans like I hate Africans. That's one thing we got in common. Because that's almost like the only reason that they have the acronym of FBA. I don't know no other reason to have because like African American is just saying you're an American, but your lineage goes back to African, or Africa rather.
Hold on, let me see. Let me get this right. You started off by saying they have no foundation.
Yeah, they don't.
They have no movement. What do you mean by they don't have a foundation? They don't have a movement? Are you saying that there's no leader? Like all of them are leaders and they all could just go out and say what they want to say about it, even if they wrong?
Yeah,
I mean, are you saying something like that?
The brother Tariq Nasheed, he's commonly considered as the founder of, at least at the minimum, Foundation of Black American. He's credited with that. I think before that you had the ADOS, and you had other terms. But as far as the FBA, he's coined with that. But if you ask him if he's the head of it, but every time I ask him, I'm going to say he's not in charge of it. So they don't have a leader. There's not a stopgap. That's what I said. So when you think of acronyms, if you say ISBK, you're going to think Commander Jehana. If you think LOI, Alliance of Israel, you're going to think Danyala, Priest Danyala. If you think of other groups, you're going to think of the top. Even if you think of Black Lives Matter, BLM, you're going to think about them two lesbians that's up at the top. So there's always going to be a top at the top. But with FBA, they pride themselves as saying it's just a lineage.
So you think it should be some rules set and some laws that we go by so that people can really take us serious?
Well, I think...
And do you think Tariq Nasheed, being that he is the father, needs to step up, put his foot down, and take charge, take command of this shit?
Okay. So you know he said we should deal with laws, a mission, all right, in lieu of their so-called capacity. This is very important that we understand it, all right? Look at the language that they're using, all right? Look at the language that they are, in fact, using, okay? But none of them are showing, based upon the language that they're using, to show that they, in fact, have the capacity based upon the authority, which is the law, okay? Which is the law, all right? Let's continue. This is FBA. It's 152. We're stopping at 154. You got a decision to make, my brothers and sisters.
Reparation since I was a teen activist. Uh,
154 is stopped.
but I don't think I've heard this much conversation about reparations ever in my life as I have in the last few years, and that's for a lot of reasons. But one of the reasons, certainly on the internet, is because we've seen these two movements among many that have emerged in social media spaces and in real life. But I see them in social media spaces a lot, and that is the ADOS movement, and then subsequently the FBA movement. I had Yvette Carnell, who is the co-founder of the ADOS movement, which of course is the American Descendants of Slavery. It's an organization and a movement. I had her on the show, and I noticed that at some point she critiqued you all for how you all were critiquing her on the show. Now, I was curious to get a better sense, because to be honest, I didn't get a chance to hear your full analysis of ADOS or of this particular approach to reparations at all. So I wanted to hear from you sort of, first, what is your critique of the movements, of those movements, particularly ADOS, because that seemed to be where you were focused on, and what do you see as a viable alternative?
So first of all, let me just say that to be fair, I didn't see everything that was said about what we did, and I'm assuming she was talking about the show we do on Fridays, which is a collective of us. Brother Diallo and Geechee on Earn Your Liberation.
I think she was right about that.
She was.
Yeah, somebody made a comment about her haircut or her hairline or something with her point.
That's fair. That's right.
Yeah,
you're right. It is, and so I just wanted to cop to, though I wasn't the one saying it, I do want to cop to that I have to a certain extent participated in that, and she would be right to be critical of that. Now, I would also say that without going belaboring the point, that there is a history there, that I have interacted with her for a number of years, and she has given as good as she has gotten, and in some cases worse. So we should just be clear on that. But primarily, the what she gave was in response to what became an increasing difference in our approach. Where at one point, I was very much appreciative of her work. She's a very capable communicator. She is good at research.
Okay, so that was dealing with FBA in regards to their agenda in reference to what we call reparations. Okay, so that's another group. All right, in regards to if they have the authority, okay, to bring such a result of lieu of what we call reparation, and if you claim to have that authority to bring a remedial effect such as reparation, you must have that capacity. All right, you must have that capacity. All right, and we don't know where that remedy is going to come from. Is it going to come from the courts? If it's going to come from the executive department, it's going to come from the legislative department. No one has put the footwork in to justify their position in lieu of the authority they have to speak about the capacity to bring forth reparation, whether it's going to be from the executive, legislative, or judiciary. No one. Okay, so let's move to the next group. Because it's all about property. We just don't want money, because if you ain't on land, where you going to be to spend it on? So the whole issue is land, all right? The use of land, all right? In lieu of reparations, in lieu of an inheritance, in lieu of a homeland, okay? These are all things we must consider in regards to our beliefs, our wants, our ideologies, our theologies. You must understand that you must have the capacity, which gives you the authority. Whether you're speaking at it from a religious, ecclesiastical, canon-wise, or you're looking at it from a secular way in lieu of what we call laws, okay? Rules, okay? Ordinances, policies, etc. These all account to capacity, which none of them are, and from far as my eyes in regards to what they're talking about, have shown. All right, let's move forward. Here's another one. It's 157 and it stopped at 150, 160. Pardon, so now will be 2 o'clock. All right, let's get it.
you know, and I've been doing this video, this Freemasonry, many of the so-called denominations, religions of Christianity, occult, you know, partially occult, you know, Rosicrucian, all of them. You know, Egypt is defined. We have to look at that. Why is that so? Why is ancient Egypt almost the foundation of every? Did nobody ask you to do that? You did that. You took the. So it's the potency in ancient Egypt. No other culture on a global scale where people, in order to get, you know, some legitimacy in what they claim they believe in, they got to have some form of ancient Egypt or new philosophy, ideology. You see, and no different. It don't make whether it was Jehovah's Witness. Then you had the Mormons. You see, old Joseph Smith say he found a papyrus, an ancient Egyptian papyrus, and you know the papyrus of Abraham, and so on and so all of them. It don't make no difference whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Quran, the Torah. Everybody want to tap in. Everybody want to be the origin of the pyramid. You see, everybody want a piece of Egypt, the occult. You know what I'm saying?
Let's stop right there. Okay. We're talking about claims. All right. We're talking about wherever you at. He spoke about pyramids. These particular monuments, megalithic structures, are not in the capacity, not under the authority of people who claim it belongs to them. Because in order for that to be, you must have that capacity. Who has the capacity that gives them authority to make claims to such megalithic monuments, okay? That we, as the ones who so-called make the claim, makes no attempt in lieu of some authority, in lieu of the capacity to not just visit it, but to make a claim in a court of law, okay, in regards to the reversion of such an estate that you claim based upon a belief, ideology, philosophy, assumption, or presumption, okay? None of them are the wiser about what it is they're lacking in understanding, which is the capacity, all right? I'm not saying they're wrong, all right? I'm just saying in lieu of the authority that we make claims, do we have the capacity to bring that into a reality, okay? That's all I'm saying. All right, we can move forward with this one. So that's another school of thought. And these sites got hundreds and thousands of members, okay? Members, all right? Members who are about the mission that they purport and under the assumption of the capacity that gives them the assumption that they got the authority to bring forth information that they assume is a fact outside the legislative branch, the executive branch, or the judiciary, okay? Because if you do have such a claim, then that is where you in fact need to be, okay? Let's go to another one. Who else we have here? Okay, we have let's see who this one is. ISUBK.
A worried feeling that you may miss exciting events.
You see that? You see that? It's a worried
feeling that you might miss exciting events. You know, I hear brothers, especially newer people, and some The Deacon Lava is gonna send a message.
We in
tonight.
this
So,
building.
y'all stay tuned. Hey, so tonight's class, the name of it is FOMO anxiety. FOMO. Let's get the thumbnail. Let's get the thumbnail right quick. FOMO anxiety, fear of missing out. Fear of missing out. So what does FOMO mean? Fear of missing out. But let's get the definition on FOMO. FOMO. It's a term. It's a social media term that a lot of people use. And when you come into the truth, a lot of our people feel like they missing out on something. Oh, I gotta go to the school this Sabbath. I'm missing out. Oh, I gotta go to the new moon. I'm missing out. So let's see. Let's give the definition. Give me the definition. FOMO. You see that, David?
Yes, sir.
Read that for me.
FOMO, fear of missing out. Abbreviation for fear of missing out. A worried feeling that you may miss exciting events.
You see that? You see that? It's a worried feeling that you might miss exciting events. I hear brothers, especially newer people, and sometimes brothers out the spirit that's been with us a long time, they feel like they missing some on Saturdays. What you missing on Saturday? You ain't missing nothing but death.
Let's stop it right
Read
there.
again. A worried.
Right there.
that you
We're
may
talking
miss
about
exciting
the authority to teach. The authority to teach. And the authority to teach is based upon the capacity or the ability to teach. Okay? Very important to understand that. But that capacity to teach based upon the authority to teach is based upon the facts that you assume or presume are in fact a fact based upon a belief, philosophy, theology, okay? Based upon your mission, your purpose. Because it's all about the mission, all right? The mission determines the capacity, okay? All right, think of the mission as the water, all right? And think of the church as the vessel, okay? The vessel and the water. We're going to talk about that in a few, okay? Let's stop it here. Let's go to another one. So this is the IUIC, you know, the brothers who be marching, okay? So, and they got thousands of members, okay? Very important to understand that. Let's stop here. It is 2:05. Let's go here. Grand Sheik Lord Taj Tariq. No, this isn't not him, Lord Taj Tariq. This is not him yet. This is Taj Rock. And some of the people you might see on other platforms. Okay? Other people you might see, they be the same people on other platforms. Okay? Because like minds attract.
Can he come to the cookout? And you said,
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI
no because he comes from the land of Africa. How can you tell if he's an Israelite or not? Because James 1:1 said Israel is scattered abroad on the four corners of the earth. So how can you tell he's Israelite or not just because he said it? You call we used to call ourselves African American, right? So how do you know he was Israelite or not? That's the question.
You're actually showing you're not listening. That's why
Let's stop. You see, two of the brothers and other platforms, all right, Brother Taj Rock, you see Sound of the TV, all right, and there's another brother Reggie, all right. They're only there as a result of the like-minded capacity based upon the assumption of what the assumed capacity is based upon their authority, which only comes from their belief, okay? Their theology, their philosophies, okay? None of it, in my eyes, is based upon a mission, okay? Because remember, we live in a modern world now. The world has been secularized. It's either religious or government, okay? So wherever your authority, based upon that capacity of whatever it is you bring it on the table where people flock to, or whatever form it is, all right? In lieu of the topic, and we see they're talking about land, okay? They're talking about land. We're talking about land. Of course, they're making reference to their affiliation with the land, okay? You got one brother saying he Israelites, so that means land mass is over in Israel. Other people call them FBA, meaning land mass over here in North America. But none of them have any interest in the capacity in regards to the consistent use of land going back to that time era when they were not here. Okay? You need a record for that. Okay? You need a recording for that. You need what we call indexing for that. You need a certifying for that. This is the purpose of the county recorder's office. Okay? This is resulted from a decentralized system that America has inherited from the English Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Everybody on this platform is speaking English. Okay? But none of them are none the wise about the capacity or the authority in regards to the topic that's on the table. Let's continue. We'll stop at 2:15, 2:13.
You not answering, but go ahead.
I actually went in detail with if it was real, him saying he's African, if that was real, I would have asked him, where did he come from?
He said he come from Africa.
No, you definitely not listening. Did I just say if it was real? This was a hypothetical question. So I'm not letting no Hamite come in on a hypothetical
How you
question.
know he a Hamite? I'm talking about the day the Psalmist said, this is my brother right here. And you didn't, you said no.
You're right. I would say no every time. Just like when he said, can a white man come? A person that looks white might not be white. But if you ask me a hypothetical question, and it's an African that you're asking me about, it's always going to be no. But if it's a real life situation, it's not going to be no. I'm going to ask him certain questions to see if he could be one of us or see if he could not be one of us.
Okay, we got to move on because I don't know how long Captain gonna be with me, but
Okay.
I wanna move
Let's
on.
stop this. So, of course, Tazariak is from a religious group, okay? Whatever name they identify with, nonetheless, he is from a religious group, okay? He has a religious authority which governs his capacity based upon the religious ecclesiastical or canon authority that they believe in, okay? It has nothing to do with any property right here in North America, all right? The other people on the platform, for whatever reason they're on the platform, are in it based upon their personal capacity, okay, based upon their assumption of what they believe in that they assume is a fact, without any authority, okay, to justify their position in lieu of the conscious capacity that they assume is a fact, okay? None of them, okay? So we who are all listening today, in lieu of the purpose of the lesson, needs to think about this lesson based upon what capacity are you acting in regards to some type of authority that you have to make a claim, not just on any platform or on the streets or any other form for that matter, okay? But where you need to be is in fact, a court of law, okay? No other place can this be done, whether it's criminal court, civil court, probate, foreclosure, or equity. These are the lawful jurisdictions to hear matters in regards to everything that's being spoken about on these platforms. but none of them have the capacity in regards to reversion of such a state to ever do claim to be as identified by your nation. Okay? Because nation goes by a administrative government that goes by law, not belief, not ideology, not religion. It has some type of capacity as authorized by statute. Okay? So let's shut this down. Let's see. Let's go here. Now, out of all the ones that I've shown you, this one seems to be the most, I wouldn't say knowledgeable, but of aware, all right, of what needs to be understood. Okay, not saying that he understands it, but nonetheless, it needs to be understood. All right, so let's look at and hear what he has to say about it. Costa Rica. Mind you, everybody's speaking English. Okay, we know that property rights origin comes from English law, where you're talking about public landholdings or ecclesiastical landholdings. In our ancestors' days, it was not held by any personal person. It was held based upon a capacity authorized by an office, okay? A office, a tenure, a station. No different than how it is today. Let's see. Like, share, subscribe.
And this is one of the reasons why I approached it. But I'm more or less concerned with the timeline. Now, one of the things that I wanted to bring to your attention, Dr. G, was the timeline, 1855. Mm-hmm. Now, for the sake of the people, because I really didn't want to go through all of this, but since there's only a couple pages, would you do us the favor to read this real quick, just go through it so that we're not talking and the people don't know. You know, I didn't want to go into this from a perspective as we usually do, although it's relatively treatise, comprehensive, so that, but we don't want to go into the race jargon, if you get the point. We want to go into geopolitics and the mineral issue and the timeline. Good.
So you want to read?
Yeah, just read as if you're.
Let's move a little further up.
Oh, yeah. Consanguine attributes, names, and titles by operation of law or by fraud can create descendability. At common law, corporal hereditaments were and are physical objects comprehended under the term land and were said to lie in livery or livery, while incorporeal hereditaments existed only in contemplation of law. And
let's stop. They're talking about inheritance, okay? They're talking about inheritance, all right? The conveyance and transfer of an inheritance, and the only way a transfer or a conveyance of inheritance in lieu of something that was passed from olden times cannot be done in a probate court, okay? Because there's no record, okay? It can't be done in a civil court, all right? Because civil court deals with contract law, and it can't be done in criminal court because the court lacks jurisdiction to hear the matter if there's no record, okay? And we're dealing with land records, okay? Land ownership, all that depends upon records, okay? Not about some belief that the land belongs to you. It's about having a title to the land, okay? A clear chain of title, okay, without any liens or encumbrances, okay, in modern day, not based upon the belief, because the law has been secularized. So if you're looking at it from a belief, religion, theology, hierarchy, etc., that will not work in regards to and a reversion of some type of a state, which is the argument which could not be made on their behalf because they lack the capacity in lieu of the authority stemming from where it came from. Okay? As he said, the common law. The common law is not the common law of America. The common law of land property right is the common law of England, and none of these people are English people. All right? Very important. When I say English people in regards to land right, I'm not talking about a nationality that is English. I'm talking about the customs and traditions of the English property rights. Okay? Not just because I claim the nationality, but I understand the tradition and customs of the property rights of the English people, which has been modernized and secularized through statutory, which gives you the authority and capacity. Lacking that, you have no right to any consistent use of land here in North America. All right? Let's play a little more. I'll stop at 223.
Were said to lie in grant and were affiliated with chattel interests. Hereditament also includes a few rights unconnected with land, but is generally used as the widest expression for real property of all kinds and is therefore employed in conveyance after the words lands and tenements to include everything of the nature of realty, which they do not cover.
Stop. So everything they're saying is correct. Okay, whether they read it from Black Law Dictionary, Henry Campbell Dictionary, everything they're saying is correct based upon property law. But they show no capacity in lieu of authority that grants them the ability to possess. You can talk about it all day long. We're talking about possession. Okay? What is your vehicle to how to possess your inheritance? It cannot be done in probate because there's a gap in the chain of title. That's why you need title insurance, okay? Because you can't prove that that which is on the record in lieu of your title, all right, is in fact a valid title because someone else can place something on the record with a valid title but has a capacity. And capacity determines possession, not title, okay? Very important. We must understand that, especially in lieu of today's lesson. Let's continue. I'll stop at 222. And the only reason why I'm gonna go that long is because at least they're speaking the right language, but not applying it right.
Also from Henry Campbell, Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Descent and descendability in matters of operation of law and of rights. Descent in its broadest sense signifies an inheritance cast upon anyone who is deemed capable of receiving it, whether heir or heir at common law.
Capacity, y'all. Capacity, heir at common law. You ain't got it under the common law of America, all right? Because there's no return of the estate in regards to the common law of America that's applicable in their circumstances, all right? Because the legislator nor the statute has declared the authority that you claim in lieu of the capacity to even make such claims based upon your belief, assumptions, theology, or philosophy on any other stations that I've shown you, okay, or platforms or vehicles, whatever you want, how you want to term them. Nonetheless, they lack the said capacity, okay, and we can end that. Let's stop on that one. Now let's go.
Do this in
One
law.
more.
So I guess the first thing.
Not one more. I got two more. Think about your capacity, brothers and sisters. What is your capacity? Because these are natural people, okay? All right? They're natural people acting based upon a belief. They don't have the authority because they don't have the capacity, because the origin of their religious belief goes back to what we call a entity, a ecclesiastical church, a canon church, or any type of a congressional church or a monastery has rules. All right, they have incorporated rules, bylaws. Okay, that determines their mission. Okay, all right. These are Christian confronts Hebrew Israelites. All right, based upon their understanding of their mission, which gives them the authority as under the assumption that they have the capacity based upon the alleged assumption, presumption, which in the court of law they will lose. Okay, because not one of them going to mention anything that's statutorily preserved in regard to your inheritance that you now have or promise. All right, because right now they're leasing, they're renting. Okay, they're paying rent. Okay, they got title insurance. That's not the proper capacity to be in if you claim that you are the inheritors, the potential inheritors in modern day. Let's continue. It's 2:24. I'll stop at 2:46. 2 minutes.
Want to talk about? We want to talk about multiple wives. We do want to talk about salvation because yesterday when we talked about salvation, he wasn't on there.
Right.
I guess, can you guys just explain again your thesis on baptism?
Oh.
Just our thesis on baptism is that we believe.
Keyword, baptism. Okay? We're going to talk about that in a few. All right? I think this is going to be a long lesson, y'all. All right? So if you fall off, if you go to sleep, that's your fault. All right? But keyword, baptism. When you're talking about baptism, you're talking about a vessel that contains water. Okay? Let's look at it from the belief, theology, historical, or what we call in secular law. Because we use it in secular law. It's baptism by the law. Okay? We call it baptism by the law, which we're going to in a few. Let's continue. So 2:20, I let him go another minute.
In Christ's baptism, that's the only baptism we're supposed to follow. So his baptism is the Holy Spirit and fire, so it's not physical water. So when you're doing that physical water baptism, if you choose to do it, that's on you, but that's not the baptism of Jesus Christ, Yahweh Shah Mashiach. That's the baptism of John. It's called John's baptism in the Bible. So for us, we just follow after Christ. We don't follow after John.
So we actually do agree that there's a distinction between John's baptism and Jesus' baptism. As Christians, as Catholics, we hold that Jesus' baptism as well. The only difference is that we hold that Jesus' baptism, the way that you identify it and the way you know you receive Jesus' baptism, is through the water. So we do water baptism. It's not John's baptism. It's Jesus' baptism that he gives us when we receive the water. Jesus says in John 3:5, you have to be born again of water and spirit. And actually the New Testament explicitly mentions the water in baptism, like in 1 Peter 3:21, where it says baptism now saves you. Hebrews 10:22, where it says that it's the water that clears our conscience. There's tons of places that talk about actual water.
Okay, baptism, cleansing, the vessel. Okay, very important to understand this, not just in a religious presentation, because this was presented to them, okay, all right, which determines their authority to do whatever they do based upon the assumed capacity, based upon the mission, okay, the mission, all right, to turn old vessels into new vessels by baptism, okay. But we look at that differently in the modern day world based upon the baptism according to law. So let's close out on that. So these are some of the forms that you as potential members, okay, that will be, if accepted, okay, fall under the student of such authority, all right, based upon the capacity as authorized them from wherever they got that authority from. Okay? So here's two more I'm going to throw at you. This is the Congressional Church, which is an 85% of majority of those in the community, all right, look to in regard to fulfilling the obligation, obtaining the God capacity, okay? To have God's authority to do what God designed us to do, okay? All right, very important we understand that. So it's 2:28. I'll let this play for a minute.
The prophet of God maybe touch him and say something and he'd be healed immediately. But the fact that he was told to do something simple, something that called for faith, he was hesitant. And that's the same thing that happens to many of us, because God says you're saved through Christ Jesus. And folks feel, well, maybe there's some works I'm supposed to do. Maybe I'm supposed to go on a pilgrimage. Maybe I'm supposed to climb some mountain. Maybe I'm supposed to do
The mission. What is your mission? What is the mission that Christ gave you, which is the authority that put you in that capacity based upon Christ's mission? Okay? The anointing they're talking about. But it's not based upon a vehicle or a vessel that can be utilized in the secular world, okay? You have to stay in your place in the belief world, okay? So if you got any inheritance that was promised from the belief world that can be conveyed or transferred to the secular world or worldly world, there must be a vessel, okay? There must be a vessel, a vehicle to make that ability to transfer that conveyance or inheritance from God to you, from the spiritual to the reality, all right, which is called lottery of season. Tasha was talking about, said it, lottery of season. Very important, all right? So majority of us understand the ceremonial or customary of what we call the congressional churches. So the only one we have now is the hierarchical churches, okay? Let's look at that. And we can close out on not the lecture, but these videos. Because you're going to find yourself on one of these forums. And this is going to determine your authority for under the assumption that Christ gave it to you, which determines your capacity, okay? Through baptism, all right? Baptism, by being cleansed, okay? Making the old vessel a new vessel, all right? Very important. One more. Okay? Everyone acting under the capacity based upon the authority that they so-called believe that they inherited. Okay? An authority that they inherited. All right? But there is nothing that they can show or present in a court of law because it's been secularized. There's a separation of church and state. So you don't have a right to any property that God gave you based upon the trustees of the church, which are called archbishop, bishops, rectors, wardens, etc. Okay? It's only based upon their capacity. All right? And each of their capacity is governed under a different law that governs their right to property, which is governed under a different law. Okay? We must understand that. Then I have one more. One second. Let's wind that back. 3 knocks and new Archbishop for New York. All this is in the name of capacity. Okay? All this is in the name of capacity. How did you gain the capacity to claim you have the authority, okay, in regards to the mission, which was the purpose for the authority and lieu of the capacity that everyone that I've shown you on the platform, on this platform or on this lecture, claim to have? Where does such authority derive from? Let me show you. This is where your capacity should come from. The mission of the continuity of our ancestors, which were identified as the Anglo-Saxon Berbers here in America, within the English Empire on the continent of America. This is vital, okay? This is vital. Why do I say that? As you can see, this is a map of the English Empire within the continent of North America. Okay, and this map shows all the continents of North, South, Central America, the Canary Islands, Africa, Europe, Portugal, Spain, okay, France, and then what they identify now as UK, Britain, okay, and England, and that only resulted from the migration of Saxons into the English overseas possessions that was under the control of the English monarchs, who were the kings who we descended out from, known as the English Empire. Okay? That is the map for you, brothers and sisters, that you can reference whenever you get time. The Anglo-Saxon Berbers of America, of the English Empire, and the continent of what? North America, or the continent of North America. They don't even say North America. It says America. Okay, very important. You don't call it North America until it's being described based upon those who are describing it in the area other than where they are. Okay, so we have to go back to the origin, okay, of where our authority came from based upon our capacity, and realize that in order for us to inherit our estate, that authority and capacity must be recognized as a result of the split, okay, or the gap, okay. There's a split in the gap between the timeline, okay, which means a bridge had to be created, okay, to connect the ecclesiastical and public landholdings that belongs to either the crown or the world governors or the Anglo-Episcopal Church or the nobles or those who were less than noble, okay? It's very important to understand that capacity of how it was held back then and held now, okay? So I created a flow chart to give you the proper understanding of how we still have the same capacity as a result of our tradition and customs of the English law governing property. Not just because of our nationality, but because of the law governing property. Okay, here in the continent of America, which was known historically as the English Empire. Okay, this is where we receive our divine authority. This is the grace that was passed down from our ancestors as a result of jurisdiction that they covered. Okay? The jurisdiction based upon our capacity. Our capacity is our divine authority, which was the grace passed down by those who decentralized the authority that was given to us by our lords. Okay? Namely, King Agar, the peaceful, our Lord Christ. As a result of this baptism, it created a lawful vessel called a jurisdictional person or a legal person or a legal fiction, which gives you a different capacity than your natural self, okay? In lieu of your inheritance, all right, that was promised that can only be preserved through statutory preservation, okay? From the old to the new, and that comes through baptism, through the sacred or the cleansing water that is within the vessel. If there's no vessel, there is no water, okay? So the origin, as we spoke in the prior videos I showed you, based upon their belief, which we are interpreting in our understanding as law, is called baptism. Baptism in a lawful vessel called a jurisdictional person, okay? Something created by law, not by belief, okay? The origin of it, historically, philosophically, from going back into theology or religion, stems from canon law, English ecclesiastical law, okay? Is which have now been decentralized and secularized into what we call religious doctrine, okay? Religious doctrine, okay? And when you teach religious doctrine, whether it's ecclesiastical law or canon law, we know that there's a separation of church and state, so that capacity and authority must be utilized in the secular world, not the spiritual world or the ecclesiastical world or the canon world, because the interest of our mission is to maintain the continuity of office in lieu of the possession of the property that is held by the office, not us in our natural capacity, because we die. Okay? We die. All right? The jurisdictional personality that we have, i.e., consciousness, is the result of the baptism by way of the water, okay, which is you, coming to the vessel, which is what we call the corporation soul, okay? The holy baptism through law. What law? New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-28. Right, saved under the charters of Great Britain. Saved from repeal. An act to incorporate trustees of religious societies for property held in corporations in place thereof. Okay? This gives us, in that capacity, which automatically gives you the authority by way of being statutorily preserved. Okay? From the Revolutionary War, we know that the decentralization came when King Edgar changed it from a central system to a decentralized system as a result of his successors, on the account of the successor who would hold that office, okay? Who would sit in that tenure. This became the problem, and this is why it became decentralized, okay? So now, due to the centralization of our tenures, i.e. office and capacity, now is known as a corporation soul, okay? Which we'll talk about in a second. Which gives us the ability to hold property through continuity of the office of the corporation soul. We are able to hold property, administer the property, and transmit the property, not subject to land control, zoning laws under civil jurisdiction created by a administration or a government created by way of a constitution that Johnny come lately. Okay, we understand that New Jersey's constitution framework, in lieu of their regulatory power, comes from a statute which gives them their capacity and authority. Anything outside of the statute, it shows them that they do not have the authority in lieu of their interest in what we call property. Our interest was preserved pre-revolutionary. Okay, it goes back to the canon law or English ecclesiastical law, now incorporated into what we call secular law through New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-28. That capacity and that authority give us the ability to be consistent with how the continuity and possession of property was held in our ancestors' day when they were under the ecclesiastical law, or what we call church law. Okay? This is governed under what we call Title 46, based upon our mission. Our mission gives us our capacity, which gives our authority. Think of the how we say it. Think of the water as a juristic person, okay, and the vessel as the corporation soul. All right, very important. So Title 46, the water is what? The authority, okay? The vessel is the statutory entity or the jurisdictional person or corporate person. Very important to understand that from these lessons, in lieu of your so-called interest in some type of land or real estate on wherever landmass that you're on. Particularly, we're talking about here in what we call North America, in reference to our nationality, in reference to the customs and traditions of property governed under our ecclesiastical law, which now has been secularized into what we call modern day statutes. This statute would entail Title 46, okay, which deals with property law of Title 46 is a statutory law giving us to act in that capacity, which is the authority. So there we have the vessel and the water. This is our protection. This is our shield. Okay? Very important. Wherever landmass we are in, and we are in the English Empire, all right, in what we call the continent of North America, before it was called what? The continent of North America. So we were what our forefathers were without doubt or contradiction. Okay? As you can see, we have the same blood, right? We have the same nationality. We have the same ancestry. We have the same DNA. The only thing missing is the capacity here in North America. We ain't talking about Africa. We ain't talking about Europe. We're not talking about UK, Britain. All right? We're talking about the English Empire before we even know it was identified as the English Empire. What is our remedial effect to regaining what we call the English Empire within the continent of North America? For that, you must have the capacity, which gives you the authority. For that, you must be baptized by the vessel, which is the corporation soul, by that water, which is what we call you. All right? When you come into the corporation soul, i.e. the religious church, the purpose is to cleanse you. Okay? To make you clean. That what does that is that shield, that jurisdictional person or personality or consciousness, okay? That's preserved in the mission. So the corporation soul is the vessel. The mission is the water. If you come into this corporation soul, then the living water is the mission. That you come into this mission with the intent to carry out the mission, which is based upon the authority which governs your capacity, which is what? The continuity of office for the continuity of possessions, not just from our predecessors, but to our successors. This is in fact called the true inheritance. If that makes sense, like, share, and subscribe. Let's continue. So this is our ancestors' preservation of our inheritance, going back to time immemorial, time out of mind, when it was just a belief, all right? It was just a hope, a faith, okay, which we didn't stop. Our ancestors didn't stop, whether we were on the continent of North America, Africa, England, etc. That preservation of that interest of our state has been preserved. But in order for you to inherit that, you must be baptized, okay? You must be baptized, all right? Let's look at this. Let's go even closer to look at the problem. Once again, these are divine instructions in lieu of our divine authority, which is by grace to govern the jurisdiction and where we reside. That only comes through baptism by having a lawful vessel, okay? The lawful vessel is the vehicle, the body. Right now, the body is not a lawful vessel because you're outside of the law in regards to the inheritance that was promised through that divine authority, which is only through that capacity, which is from the grace of our ancestors. Okay? That follow the principles of what we call canon law or English ecclesiastical law, which are the same laws we go by today, just being operative in a different form. Okay? All right? Part so. Different form, same form, different form. Okay? So we have the same form, but different form. All right? That form is now called a corporation soul outside of what we call a church. And I'm going to show you the reason why. Because, as we're going to see, the different forms or platforms don't have an interest in the preservation of the estate or land based upon the inheritance that they claim to have based upon their belief, presumptions, theologies, philosophies, with no law to govern the transfer of such of a state that's based upon their belief, which they assume is a fact. In order for that fact to become reality, you need a court of law. Okay? The legislature is not going to do it, nor the executive branch. So reparations is out the door. It's not going to happen. Okay? So we have 16:1-28, as I stated earlier. Preserve a reservation of our estate, held in antiquity, okay? Being held in a trust, okay? A irrevocable, constructive trust, all right? By 16:1-28, right state under charters of Great Britain, saved from repeal. An act to incorporate trustees of religious societies for property held in corporations in place thereof. So all the churches, whether they're congregational or hierarchical, no matter where they are, whether are they the Masonic lodges, are they the Catholic churches, all right? Are they the royal governors? Are they the government? Are they preserving your interests in the property that was promised through that grace in lieu of the jurisdiction that they are trustees of? Because it said that they're holding the property in lieu of being trustees for the beneficiaries. The beneficiaries are the potential heirs, which is yet to be determined. Okay? In order for you to be an heir, you must fall within the cleansing of the ceremonial tradition known as baptism. Okay? By receiving that authority through the cleansing by way of coming into the vessel, which is the corporation soul, and now being through consciousness being associated with the statutory entity, which is immortal, okay? Being exemplified in your secular world as a result of that statutory protection, okay? Acting outside of that shield is considered under the statutes, not belief, not theology, not philosophy, but the statute, Title 16:1-28 and Title 46 govern property. Title 46 does not give you the capacity. Title 46 gives you the interest in the in property in regards to the consistent use of the property according to what the statute says the capacity that you should have, which we go into in a minute. So anything outside of the authority, all right, govern your capacity as provided by statutory law, okay, which gives you the right to exist as an entity, all right, which limits your authority. Anything outside of that authority as governed by the statute is considered ultra virus and is void ab initio from the beginning. So this is why you must be baptized, not by the belief, as we just heard from the other platforms in regards to the inheritance, but by the legal understanding of baptism based upon its being illustrated here today. This is your protection from us to go from this okay, incapacitated. Being incapacitated gives you the ability to lack capacity, okay? We need to regain that capacity by not being incapacitated, okay? We need to not be incapacitated. And only for us to understand that, we must understand the root and origin of where our capacity comes from, okay? We must understand that. And by the time I'm finished with you today, you will. All right? Let's get it. Now look at that picture. Long and hard, brothers and sisters. These are not Arabs. These are not Moors. These are not what you call Americans. These are Anglo-Saxon Berbers. Look at them. Look at the nobility. All right? That's because of your nationality. All right? But without that capacity and authority based upon the mission, and we know the mission is the water. That water cleanses you by becoming part of the vessel. That cup upside down. That golden grail. That golden cup. All right? Very important. As above, so below. Look at it, brothers and sisters. This is your window of opportunity. Let's dive even deeper. The reason why we lack the capacity is a result of us not understanding the decentralization of the central government into a decentralized government that was passed by our Lord the Christ, King Edgar the Peaceable. Once again, King Edgar the Peaceable. All right? Very important. And that's a result of successorship. Everyone wanted to claim successorship, all right, as the heirs governing the beneficiaries, the heirs who are the beneficiaries, and govern the estate that was left in limbo, okay? It was left in limbo. This was all the way up to the time of William the Conqueror, all right, to the Revolutionary War, all right? There was no way of a lawful conveyance of the estates that were promised by your ancestors, i.e. King Edgar, our Lord in Christ, okay? Based upon the internal conflict, which was a succession dispute. This came to a head with Ethelred the Unready, King Edgar's son, a descendant, okay? So this is why the administrative and the procedural law was decentralized as a result of the successor disputes, okay? Who wanted to be heirs? Because we see that everyone wanted to be heirs, all right? These are what you call the Viking invasions, which are still going on today, all right? I'm not going to go into the historical aspect or the philosophical aspect or the theological aspect of it. Why? Because there's no need to. There's no need to. Why? Because I remember. I remember the origin of the capacity, okay? I remember the mission, okay? The mission of why we had these capacity, okay? But the capacity based upon the mission, which gives us authority, cannot be utilized in the manner as in the olden days, okay? Same law, different century. Same form, different form, okay? It ain't about personality. It's about capacity. Brothers and sisters, do you have the capacity? Right now, you don't. Right now, you don't. Let's see. That stopped the golden age, okay? We must return to the golden age. In order to return to the golden age, you must remember. Okay, the word remember spelled backwards is almost the word Berber. Okay? Almost the word Berber phonically. Queen. Mind make me smoke coffee? Now this is old information. All right, but picture speaks 1,000 words, and a lot of you have a hard time staying focused. So we have to understand the grace that was given by our Lord, King Edgar, governing the jurisdiction in regards to the purpose of the mission, all right? While we must maintain the capacity to maintain the mission. We know that the mission is based upon the consciousness of why we got this capacity. It ain't for ourselves, but it's for the continuity of the capacity, i.e. the office, all right, which is responsible for the continuity of the possession of the property, not from just olden time or our ancient time, but to modern times. Same law, different form. Okay? The role of the corporation soul from King Edgar's time being decentralized all the way up to William the Conqueror, all the way up to the colonial days, all right? And it came to a head with the state of New Jersey at the time of the colonials. At this time, they were called colonies. Very important. The role of the corporation soul as defined statutorily, which gives you your authority and your capacity to have an interest in the land that was ecclesiastical or public land holdings based upon your interest under Title 46. If you're part of a church, if you're part of a religious group, if you're part of any of those groups that I showed you earlier, if you don't have the authority as authorized by statute, you don't have the capacity of any type of interest in land or in the state in land based upon your belief. Okay? It must be authorized. So the role of the corporation soul and the proper context, we must understand the purpose and its origin. The origin is what we call ecclesiastical law, which is the law of the church. Okay, and we already seen the videos I showed you about the church, but their interest in those churches has nothing to do with the continuity and possession of property, i.e. church property, whether it's religious or public land holdings. Nonetheless, church property is maintained by the office and not who the person. So it's about you understanding the mission of the authority that's embedded in the capacity. Okay, that's why this flow chart is very, very important. If you don't operate in that capacity, then you lack the authority, which in the eyes of a court will be considered ultra virus, beyond your scope of authority. If it's a belief, you can do whatever the hell you want, all right, and not be held accountable for it, all right? So in understanding the grace that our ancestors have transformed into a modern day landholding system, which is governed by the courts, because we know the courts is not the county recorder's office. The county recorder's office is not the clerk, okay? And we know that when you have an interest in land, you must have a title. And the only way you have a title by way of an interest in land is to have that title filed on what? The county recorder's office. This does what? Establish what they call a chain of title. But guess what? You got titles insurance, right? You not only got title insurance, but you got, which is called buyer's insurance, but you also is paying for what we call the lender's insurance or title insurance, which assures the mortgage. Okay, we know mortgage is not an interest in property. Mortgage is a contractual agreement that results in a lien of you pledging and voluntarily gifting your property that is called fee simple, which was preserved through Title 46, okay, or whatever statute governing property in your own state, okay, based upon your interest, which is absolute fee simple, based upon property law that goes back to English common law that was rooted in English ecclesiastical law that which determined that land was attached to what? The office and not the person. Do y'all hear me? I'm going slow for you. Succession without probate. All right. See, this is the problem we see when we show the other videos. All right, in regard to their so-called claims based upon our interest in land. Okay, and none of these people hold any office to show they got the authority to make such a claim in land because what? They lacked the said capacity. Okay, just because you got a title file on the record in lieu of what we call a deed, don't mean that that deed is valid. Okay, it don't mean that that deed is valid. All right. So as we can see with the grace that was passed down by our Lord in regards to our inherited estate or land, all right, which was preserved statutorily, okay, there's no need to prove who was the last person on the record because it was not preserved by way of a deed. It was preserved statutorily, okay? Very important. That's Title 46 3-2. New Jersey revised statute dealing with any type of inheritance that you can think of under the common law. Not common law of America, which Tariq was talking about, but the common law of England. Being secularized, right? Under the same capacity as authorized by the statute based upon the mission. Okay? The mission. In order for you to be a mission, you must be washed with the holy water from that holy vessel. Okay? This is based upon the words. In the beginning was the word was God, the word became flesh and dwelt amongst you. So hearing the word changes you from that mortal to that spiritual person because you hold that office in your natural capacity because you're removing yourself based upon your consciousness from the secular world, but being in the world. You hear it? Be in the world, but not of the world. Okay? So therefore, in order for you to understand you in your personal capacity to own property based upon the mission, okay, you must understand it as part of the corporation soul, which is not your natural person, okay? You're acting as that jurisdictional person, which gives you the grace, okay? All right? You must maintain the mission and capacity. If not, it will be considered what? Ultravirus, and if it's ultravirus, then you will be outside of that shield. You see that? You will not be protected. That dome. All right? That dome. Okay? So if you still protected, the dome ain't went nowhere. You step outside of the dome. You step outside of the jurisdiction which protect you. Okay? We know jurisdiction deals with territory of where the laws applies. In order for the court to have personal jurisdiction, it must have subject matter jurisdiction. In order for the court to have jurisdiction, it must have territorial jurisdiction. When it has territorial jurisdiction, it has subject matter jurisdiction. And that can only come from personal jurisdiction, i.e. dealing with persons. All right? So it's very important to understand that we must maintain acts that won't be considered ultra-virus, okay? Outside of our capacity, as prescribed by the authority, as preserved by the statute. Title 16 and Title 46. Okay? This is why it's called the Garden State. Stay protected. Let's go to page 4. Right here. Okay, so we see succession under the corporation soul. There's no need to bring a claim in regard to the reversion of your estate in any court of law, let alone probate. There's no need to prove that the estate was passed down from your ancestors, because there is no ancestral estate passed down by way of probate, because there's a gap in the conveyance. Okay, going back to the capacity of our ancestors who had it, going back to it being passed down by the Lord. Okay, so there must be a literal bridge to do that. All right, a bridge needs to be created, a stabilizing statute. Something that stabilizes the transfer of the conveyance of the property to those who are not natural consciously, but physically are in fact natural. Okay, meaning that their corporal body is their conscious understanding of the mission. Okay. All right, this assists you in the transition from the physical to the spiritual, okay? So we understand that succession and the inheritance that is immortal, okay? Go back to time immemorial, it's beyond the grave, okay? Mortemain, dead pledge, all right? Is maintained not by the person, but the office, whether you call it a parson, bishop, rector, archbishop, abbot, Thane, rector, etc. the property is maintained by the office, not a natural person, but a corporate body, i.e., a jurisdictional person, a immortal and conscientious person. This is the successor steps to maintain or inherit your property. You must understand that. Title 16:1-28 gives you that capacity. This is the living vessel. Okay? This is the living vessel. All right? We understand the mission is the water, the life-giving water. That is the resurrection from life to death. You know, we need water to live, right? Then we have New Jersey Revolutionary Statute, which is a safeguard of that ecclesiastical or public landholding property that was not held by the natural person, but by the office, preserved in New Jersey Statute 46:3-2. Why? New Jersey Revolutionary Safeguards. After the revolution, there was a problem about who owned what. Who were the heirs, who were not heirs. Okay? Who owned land by grants and who didn't. Okay? Who was still on land or who wasn't. Okay? This was the justification for the laws of our ancestors being decentralized. Okay? We know that America, we understand British, we understand Spanish, France, in regards to the English Empire being in the continent of North America, are Johnny come lately. Okay? So we work our way from Ethelred the Unready, which was a result of why it was decentralized, and now became a land registration system composed of territories known as what they call hundreds, shires, and now called counties, which consist of your county courts and your county recorder's office. Okay, this was created to maintain a record of title who were the actual owners of the land, pre-revolutionary. Okay, so this has nothing to do with a deed being filed for the county recorder's office. Okay, this was recorded for that purpose. Okay, before you had the county recorder's office, the true owners of the land was what? The crown. Okay, the crown, and the crown protected church land, whether it was what? Institutionalized property or what we call public property, i.e. land holdings. This is before the Revolutionary War and after the Revolutionary War. This was a safeguard or a stabilizing between the gap and the preservation of how the land was conveyed to those who were the ones who the land belonged to. Okay? And that's only based upon your capacity to use the land based upon the land was granted to you to use. This is called easements. It's called an easement. The ability to use land. This brought on the modern evolution of property law. Okay? The modern evolution of English or ecclesiastical property rights are now governed based upon the statutory enactment governing the capacity to have an interest in land. Based upon that capacity, which gives you the authority to have an interest in land. And interest in land and capacity are governed under two different statutes. I don't care if you're talking about a religious institution. I don't care if you're talking about a LLC. I don't care if you're talking about a nonprofit. It falls under different statutes in regards to your capacity, which gives you the authority to even claim to have an interest in lieu of what we call land use. Okay? Title 46 deals with the consistency of how the land will be used. Okay? Not the capacity, but how the land will be used. Your capacity comes from a different statute and is not based upon a religious belief or theology or philosophy or historical understanding. So this is modern evolution of property rights, whether ecclesiastical or governed under secular law now, statutorily, are preserved under 16:1-28. This particular statute preserves what we call a fee simple title. We know these are titles that were filed on the county record, okay? But you must have a capacity to file a deed on the county record. Whether you are an entity or a natural person, you must have the capacity. Everybody hold that thought. Okay. So, once again, we know we're talking about capacity, what gives you authority. The capacity gives you the authority. If you don't have the capacity, you don't have the authority, especially when you're talking about an interest in land. Okay? So, our capacity, which gives our authority in interest of land, comes from 16:1-28, which is a fee simple title, which was a result of Queen Impetuous. Okay? New Jersey Revised Statute 16:1-28, which we know are rights saved under charges of Great Britain, all right, preserves, not grants, okay, preserves fee simple titles originally held under a corporation sole or British charter, okay, so a incorporated through your certificate of incorporation under a corporation sole under 16:1-28 automatically embeds you with the preserved rights in regards to the interest of property rights governed under Title 46. Okay? Consistent with land use pre-revolutionary. Okay? So the fee simple estates are different in lieu of the estates that you file on the county records today. Because the county recorder office doesn't give you an interest in the estate based upon the proper capacity. All right? It does not. The proper capacity is the origin of the capacity to use land, and we see here is Queen of Pretorius and their donuts conditional bus. Okay? Queen of Pretorius doesn't mean you can alienate land, which is only by way of fee simple, which is do a common recovery practice, which is done through what they call your mortgage companies or your lending companies, which all has to deal with an LLC, a corporation that deals with profit on account of economics, which rooted in contracts, not continuity and possession of property that extended from the protection of property that goes back into that capacity that was preserved before the modern evolution of the preservation of property was created statutorily. Okay? And that was due to the centralization of public and religious land holdings. Okay? Which were not held by what? A natural person, but was held by what? A corporation, a jurisdictional person, i.e. the vessel. The water. Okay? The water. If you come into this corporation store, i.e. this religious institution, and you understand its mission, then you are that life-giving water. Okay? You are that life-giving water. And as a result of that life-giving water, there is no bar on your intel estate that was promised and preserved statutorily. Okay? Preserved statutorily. So there is no chain of title unbroken. Okay? is not subject to the same type of fee simple estates that you see here today, because the fee simple estate that you see recorded on the title on the county recorder office today is only based upon the recording of an instrument and not the intent of the use of the land in regards to what the statute has preserved. So that becomes ultravirus in lieu of statutory analysis. All right. So we see that it's not based upon profit. It's not based upon personal interest. It's based upon office-based or tenure-based, based upon the mission. Okay, in lieu of ownership. All right, which is not a matter for probate. It's not a matter for civil or criminal. It's a matter of equity. Okay, equity, and we know when we deal with equity, we don't ask for reparation. We don't ask for return of land. Well, we ask for the enforcement, all right? Enforcement of what the statute says, because the land already is preserved. There's no need to return it. You must have the capacity to have the authority to have it returned through reversion or amendment in the proper jurisdiction, and that will be a court of law, okay? What court would that be? A court of chancery, all right? A court of chancery. So we must understand the difference between the purpose of a hierarchical church and a congregational church or congregational church that you see, all right? And they're governed by different statutory laws that give them the capacity, okay? Very important. We understand that our hierarchical interest in land, all right, in regards to Title 46, does not come from a religious or theosophical or religious base. It has now been secularized, okay? So as a result of that, there is no need to go to any other court but a court in regards to what we call declaratory and injunctive relief, all right? That's what we need. So the question becomes to me, and it should be to you, do you have the capacity or not to possess God's property? Do you have the capacity or not to possess God's property? Who holds God's property? The government. The government is your government ordinance department. That means that it's the governments, the states, which is the government, and departments and officers, okay? And they create agencies which are created not for possession and ownership, but regulations. They are the regulators and not the owners, okay? They are the regulators in lieu of how a person claims to have an interest in an estate, okay? And we already know they lack the capacity because they don't have the statutory authority, okay? The only person that has statutory authority are those who have been baptized based upon being washed in that proper vessel. The proper vessel is our religious corporation, and we understand our religious corporation and its mission is that life-giving water to change your natural self into that spiritual self, i.e. a juristic person, okay? To do that, you must be an inheritor, okay? A potential inheritor, because you are, in fact, the owners. You must have the what? God capacity. Did you hear that? How many of you got the God capacity to be an inheritor? All right? Statutorily. All right? Not based upon some belief, but statutorily. Okay? I think I'll go to 4 o'clock. If you are, then perfect. Below is your exact structure, which is preserved point by point, with New Jersey case law and statutory authority embedded into each section, so it reads as doctrinally sound, court-ready analysis, not commentary, i.e. declaratory and injunctive relief. Hell, you can use the flow chart alone and it's sound, okay? Because what you're reading is reflected in the flow chart, okay? The role of the vessel, okay? Under 16:1-28, from the time of King Edgar decentralization of our ecclesiastical body of politics or corporate, all right, has now been secularized by way of what we call stabilized by Title 46, okay, in lieu of the property that belongs to the true owners, that's you, the heirs, but you lack the capacity, so you lack the authority. Hopefully you can follow along now. In the colonial era, the corporation sole functioned as a primary legal mechanism for religious and public what? Landholdings, particularly where continuity of ownership was essential to the performance of ecclesiastical or public duties. Its central purpose was to ensure that land attached to an office did not become entangled into personal estates of the office holder. This structure predates American law and derives directly from English ecclesiastical and crown law, okay? Where courts recognize that governance and religious functions require uninterrupted control of land. New Jersey courts have consistently acknowledged this distinction between institutionalized ownership and personal ownership in cases involving church property, holding that such land is impressed with public or religious trust is not treated as ordinary property, private property. See McKenzie versus Trustee, the Presbyterian of Jersey City. Okay? Point 2. Succession without probate. There's no need to prove who owns it because the statute already did it. It's a stabilizing statute. Under the corporation sole model, a parson, archbishop, bishop, rector, or church warden held title not as a natural person, but as an office. Upon the death of the office holder, no probate occurred. Title did not pass to the heirs and did not revert to the crown or what we call your modern day states. Please listen, y'all. Now, in spite of the platform that I've shown you, listen to the language that you're hearing here that gives you the authority based upon the capacity that was preserved by your descendants, your heirs, okay? Protected by that golden shield, okay? So the interest and equitable title of a feasible estate in regards to how it was preserved statutorily did not pass to a natural person, i.e. a descendant, okay? It did not revert due escheatment or eminent domain to the state or to the crown. Why? Because it has been decentralized. It has been secularized. The property remained vested in what? The office itself, awaiting the next lawful successor. Did you hear that? Wrap your mind around that statement. So wasn't nobody going to be born. No heir. Had nothing to do with primogeniture now. All that was stopped when it was decentralized. The only heir is that person who met that capacity level as prescribed by statute. Okay, anything outside of that statutory authority is ultra virus, outside of the scope of your authority. Okay, especially when you're talking about property. All right. So the property remained vested in the office itself, awaiting the next lawful successors. Do you see any successor in lieu of what we just spoke about on this lecture today of any of the platforms or forums in regards to the statutory authority that came from the capacity from the original owner, i.e. linking back to the clear chain of title? Have you? Seriously, ask yourself, have you? New Jersey courts have long recognized this principle by holding that ecclesiastical property does not form part of a personal estate. Remember, different form of the individual clerics, therefore does not descend by inheritance. In Protestant Episcopal Church versus Graves, the court emphasized that church property is held for the benefit of the religious body and remains unaffected by the death or replacement of the individual office holder. This rule avoided fragmentations of church land or public lands, all right, and prevented interruption of religious or public functions. Precisely the continuity New Jersey courts continue to protect when adjudicating disputes over religious property. This is sound doctrine, brothers and sisters. Point 3, the two bodies doctrine. This structure relies on the classic two-body doctrine. Look it up, brothers and sisters. Which New Jersey courts apply functionally even when not using the term explicitly. Natural body, the human being, mortal and subject to the death and probate. Then you have the corporate body, the office, continuous, perpetual, and non-probate. Okay? When a natural person dies, the corporate body survives what? Intact. The successor does not receive property by deed or inheritance. Nothing to do with the public record. It's all based upon authority and rooted in the capacity before you even get on the record. Okay? Remember, title is determined by the record. Capacity is determined by the instrument. We gave you the capacity, and that's the statute. All right? Do your capacity, do your incorporation. Okay? Corporate, juristic person, legal fiction, all synonymous terms. Successor does not receive property by deed or inheritance. Rather, the successor steps into an already what? Existing legal body. The successor, that means you, steps into an already existing legal body. Be in the world, but not of the world. This doctrine is reflected in New Jersey jurisprudence, recognizing that clerics act in a representative capacity when holding church property. In Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Newark versus Ho Kush Borough, which have a separate capacity than the corporation sold, okay, which we're talking about in a second. The Supreme Court treated church property as owned by institutional ecclesiastical entities rather than by an individual office holder, reinforcing the separation between the human office holder and the legal body that holds title. This is why the corporation soul is properly described as legally immortal. The law treats the office, not the person, as the enduring what? Title holder. Okay? Not because you have a deed, filed on the county recorder office, but it's because of the instrument that was based upon the capacity as reinforced by statute and limited by statute, whether they were statutorily enumerated or whether they were statutorily limited. Okay? The fact still remains that the capacity is based upon the authority of how the capacity was conveyed. Okay? And it had nothing to do with a natural person. So if you claim to have an interest in an estate or land in lieu of it being conveyed based upon the process of probate, we got you beat. 4. New Jersey Revolutionary Safeguard. This is the stabilizing title. Okay? And we know Title 46 does not give you the capacity. It just gives you the interest in use of land based upon the capacity, which is governed by another statute. If you don't have a statute giving you the capacity, then guess what? You have no authority. Hold that hold that opinion. Okay. 4. New Jersey Revolutionary Safeguard or Stabilizing Statute. Is New Jersey statute annotated 46:3-2. New Jersey statute annotated 46:3-2 is a critical and often overlooked statutory safeguard. Why? Because it gives us our capacity, but if the capacity is conveyed to you unauthorized, then it's considered what? Ultra virus. We understand that the state or any state of the United States don't have an interest in lieu of consistent use of property under Title 46 because they're not there for ownership. They are there for regulatory purposes. Okay? Regulatory purposes. Very important. So, the statute specifically recognizes land held by any public body or corporate. They are a body of politics. We are a corporate with a body of politics, secularized, rooted in ecclesiastical law. Laws govern the church through administrative structure. Okay? Administrative structure. Serving a specific historical and legal purpose. Why? Following the American Revolution, widespread uncertainty arose concerning what? Land previously held by who? Who? The Crown, okay? The Royal Governors, the Anglican Episcopal Churches, and other British affiliated institutions. We're not talking about natural people and their natural capacity. We're talking about entities and their capacity as a juristic person, okay? Before the laws were even modernized, before the laws were even decentralized, okay? Before the laws were even secularized, the Crown, the Royal Governors, the Anglican Episcopal Churches, and all the British affiliated institutions were all around at the time of the Revolutionary War, okay? But none of them actually own their property. None of them. All right? No, when I say them, I'm talking about any person other than the Crown, Royal Governors, the Anglican Episcopal Churches, and the British affiliation institutions. Why? Because we know the Crown were the ones who conveyed the interest in property by way of by what we call grants, whether they were for public landholdings or for religious landholdings. Nonetheless, they were granted by the Crown, and we know that the Crown was overseen by one natural person acting in a legal capacity known as a juristic person called what? A corporation. So, which is the modern day governed under 16:1-28, which gives us our capacity statutorily, which confines us based upon our mission. Okay? Our purpose and intent, which is to maintain the capacity of our office and officers based upon the continuity of possessions that are overseen by the office or officers in regard to the beneficiaries, which are you. The only way you can inherit that is to maintain your capacity by being baptized by way of becoming part of the vessel, which is the life-giving water. And the only reason why you join this vessel or religious institution is because of our mission. Okay? All right? So you're not thinking about yourself. You're thinking about the stabilization of your future posterity. All right? So it says, after legislative protection, such lands could have been deemed forfeited. For that, you need foreclosure court. On the list, for that, you need probate court. Or subject to redistribution. Okay? That's contract law. That's civil court. Foreclosure court, mortgage, liens, etc. But by affirmatively recognizing corporate and political bodies as valid holders of estates and land, New Jersey statute annotated 46-2 stabilizes titles and prevented disruption of long-standing institutional ownership, whether it was for public landholding or religious landholding. Okay? Very important to understand that if you want to regain that capacity. Okay? New Jersey courts have relied on this principle to uphold continuity of title, where land is held by corporate or ecclesiastical entities, ensuring that such property was not swept into revolutionary forfeiture or post-colonial uncertainty. In short, the statute prevents a post-revolution real estate free-for-all. Okay? It didn't say pre, it said post. So that's the reason why they tell you to get buyer's insurance or title insurance to ensure you or protect you in case of a superior claim in lieu of what we call the record, i.e. the county recorder's office. Why? Let's look at the county recorder's office and see what it does. Recorder of deeds, county recorder's office, or your land registry system. Okay, you'll find this in every county, bureau, shire, hundred, etc. This was set up by our ancestors, the Anglo-Saxon Berbers, as a proof of our interest in property governed under Title 46, not just resulting because we filed a deed, but because of our capacity. All right, a difference between having a deed on the county recorder's office with the capacity versus having the deed on the county recorder's office without the capacity. Why? Because we know that based upon our understanding, based upon the lessons that I'm teaching you, there's a difference between us and them who already got deeds on the county recorder office in lieu of their lacking the authority governed by the capacity, which is what? The statutory law. Let's read it. Recorder of deeds or deed registration is a government office, i.e. an agency, tasked with maintaining public records and documents, especially records relating to real estate ownership, that provides persons other than the owner of a property with real rights over that property. So that means that's an easement. That's what we call a non-possessory use in land that don't belong to you. It just said it. Okay? You're allowed to record a deed on the county recorder office in lieu of your use of the land that actually belongs to the owner, but the owner is none the wiser. Why? Because he don't realize that he has an equitable interest in the estate. And as a result of his capacity has been changed, he don't have the authority to enforce it. Okay? Very important that you all comprehend your king. 5. Evolution into Title 16. Once again, evolution to ecclesiastical or canon law to what we now call statutory law under Title 16, which gives us our capacity. Okay? We ain't talking about our interest in the land. You can't have an interest in the land until you have the capacity. It says here, while corporations are rare today, The legal concept never disappeared. It did what? It evolved. Remember in the movie Tony Stark's, ain't no what's his name said, Ultron, ain't no strings on me. Very important. We're not puppets, okay? Modern New Jersey religious landholding is primarily governed by what? Title 16, which preserves the same continuity principles through statutory religious corporations, okay? Now, different religious groups incorporate under Title 16, but not under Title 16 on the 1-28, because those who incorporate under that has property rights that goes back to Great Britain based upon that stabilizing statutory law or statutory rule, which is Title 46.3-2, which gives us our interest to use the land which was preserved without the need for probate, okay? So modern New Jersey religious landholding is primarily governed by Title 16, which preserves the same continuity principles through statutory religious corporations. Hierarchical churches, including Catholic, Episcopal, and Orthodox traditions, may still operate through bishops acting in a functional corporation sole capacity or trustees with perpetual succession. Congregational churches typically employ a corporation aggregate, a board of trustees, but the body politic concept remains intact. Okay, so you see different types of religious societies. You got congregational, you got hierarchical, such as Episcopal, Anglican, and the other likes, and then we have what we call those who are incorporated as a corporation, so based upon the preservation of the land interest, which the other ladders I just mentioned don't enforce. Okay, that's a secondary interest to them. All right, so as the New Jersey courts have repeatedly held that regardless of the structure, church property is controlled according to the governing ecclesiastical framework and is not treated as the personal property of the clergy. So when you're dealing with the secularized, i.e. separation of church and state, any ecclesiastical property of the church is governed by the church. Any property governed by a corporation sole is governed by the corporation sole, or they're not governed under the same laws that religious institutions that are governed under, because we know that they don't go by state statutes. They go by their religious doctrine, their ecclesiastical laws, their canon laws, okay? There's no merging interest there, all right? We must comprehend the capacity. See John, Ukrainian Catholic Church versus Diocese, a 1961 case. In all cases, the objective remains identical to the colonial model: to separate sacred or institutional land from personal ownership and personal probate. You hear that? The mission is to separate sacred or institutional land from personal ownership or personal probate. That's our mission. Okay? Why does this still matter? The corporation sole is not an historical curiosity. Let's explain this. The corporation sole is not a historical curiosity. It explains, one, why certain religious titles never broke in chain, meaning a clear chain of title. You know who the grantor is. So there's no need for what? Title insurance, okay? Nor lender's insurance. But they make you pay for lender's insurance just in case somebody files a superior lien on the record in regards to your claim on the record as a result of you lacking the capacity. They know you lack the capacity. Why? Because they know somebody else has a fee simple interest, absolute interest in the estate as preserved by the statute, but you must have the capacity, and the capacity comes from the statute. If you lack the capacity, you lack the authority. Okay. So it says why some property interests do not behave like fee simple personal estates, and why New Jersey courts continue to recognize office-based ownership as distinct from individual ownership. Very important to understand that, y'all. And we'll touch on that, if I don't do it today, tomorrow. It also directly undercuts arguments that attempt to treat ecclesiastical land as ordinary private property when both history and New Jersey law demonstrate that it never was. Okay? That it never was. Clarified court accurate statement. Fee simple control under New Jersey statute annotated is preserved under 16:1-28, which is not based upon the interest in the land, but based upon your capacity, which gives you the statutory authority to have an interest in the land governed under another statute, which would be, in this case in point, Title 46, specifically 46:3-2. What 16:1-28 actually does? It is a saving and investing statute enacted to prevent forfeiture of lapse of property held by religious bodies before the American Revolution under British rule or ecclesiastical authority. The statute vested fee simple title, which means all estates, real and personal, held in fee or otherwise. You hear that? So 61-28 already invested in you a clear chain of title. Okay? Already invested in you. Embedded. Preserved. And success of New Jersey religious corporations by operation of law without requiring what? A new deed. Did you hear that? Without requiring a new deed, regardless of defects and colonial conveyances or trustee succession, because they have different what? Capacities. This is settled New Jersey doctrine, okay? Critical precision. Fee simple was not personal. It was institutional. Our court points is correct if we state it this way. All right? So as long as we don't go into our assumptions, our beliefs, our theologies, based upon our presumption how history is told, which in the court of law, not going to entertain because courts only go by three things. Is there a deed? Is it recorded? And do they have the capacity? Nothing else. They don't ask who the person is. They want to know you got that capacity. Fee simple title was controlled by ecclesiastical office or corporate religious bodies, not by what? The natural person. However, in modern New Jersey law, courts describe this control as belonging to, let's see, the religious corporation created or recognized under what? Title 16. Or its trustees acting as the continuing body of politics, not the individual clerics' personal ideals, theirs, or beliefs, or thoughts. Okay? Very important. It's about the mission. Distinction matters legally, but it supports, not weakens, our argument. How corporation soul fits correctly into our argument. Let's see. Historically, all right, so this is from a broader, all right, analysis. Under English ecclesiastical law, a corporation soul, i.e. the trustees, whatever name you doing it based upon the capacity, all right, held fee simple title not in their personal, ideological, or personal beliefs, okay, but based upon the mission, all right, the mission. That structure ensured succession without the need for going into a court to prove who in fact is a successor or who were the predecessors of such an estate, because the continuity is preserved by statute, okay, in lieu of the continuous owner who granted it to us, and that was by the grace of our Lord. Post-revolutionary in New Jersey. 61-28 absorbed and preserved not the use, but the ownership All right? It didn't preserve their use, but preserved their ownership without the need for a deed, without the need for probate, all right? Not without the need for passing new laws, because the law was created to preserve, all right? Post-revolutionary New Jersey, 61-28 absorbed and preserved that ownership, but translated it into a New Jersey religious corporation, whether a functional corporation sole, hierarchical church, or a corporation aggregate trustees. Okay? So the correct legal framing is what? The fee simple estate originally held through a corporation sole or ecclesiastical office was preserved and vested into the successor religious corporation under New Jersey law 161-28. Rights stated under the charters of Great Britain saved from repeal, an act to incorporate trustees of a religious society for property held in corporation and place thereof who have a different capacity than we do. Okay? Why our fee simple control argument holds? Let's see. Under 16-1-28 and 16-1-4, as well as 1-6, the religious corporation or its trustees, not in their personal capacity, but in their natural capacity, holds fee simple title with perpetual succession, immune from what? Probate, heirship, or personal estate claims, subject only to the statutory governance requirement, i.e., within the scope of your statutory capacity. Anything outside of that will be considered what? Ultra virus, outside the scope of your authority. So New Jersey courts consistently hold that, again, church property is not personal property of the clergy, trustees, shareholders, or officers. It's the office. Fee simple title does not descend by way of inheritance because there's no need for probate. Control flows through the institution, not the individual. That's the office and the capacity. Okay? I'll quit at 4:30, and I'll either go into part 2 tomorrow. So I got another half an hour. Clean court ready synthesis. You can use this verbatim. New Jersey statute annotated 61-28 functions as a statutory bridge, i.e. stabilizing bridge, i.e. legal bridge, preserving fee simple title originally held under colonial ecclesiastical authority, often through a corporation sole. Investing that title by operation of law, that would be 46-3-2, in lieu of 46-3-5 and 3-15, they don't condition the bus and Queen of Pretorius, and to that successor, New Jersey Religious Corporation under 16-1-28. The statute ensures uninterrupted institutional or as well as public land ownership, perpetual succession, and immunity from personal probate or heirship claims. Fee simple title, which while absolute estate remains institutionally controlled rather than personally owned. That is the full synopsis of our mission. Okay? Let's continue. Seeking entry into the corporation sole pursuant to 46-3-2 and 16-1-28, based upon the grace of our Lord. Okay, very important. A symbolic transition of authority and enlightenment. Now we understand our capacity, all right, under 16-1-28 and 46-3-2, which was preserved pre-revolutionary, okay, all right, and we understand that protection is not going to come through a church, it's not going to come through the legislative branch. It's not going to come to the executive branch. It's going to come to the judiciary branch. Okay, a court of law. What they do, enforce order. Okay, very important. This brings up the capacity again. Okay, the authority. All right, the capacity and authority. All right, we understand the origin of archbishops, which are trustees. All right, we understand the purpose of the missions of the ecclesiastical and canon churches. All right, and we understand the purpose of entry into the ecclesiastical or canon, as we see based upon the installation of Archbishop Hicks. Okay, we also see that their symbolic is similar to that of Masonic tradition in regards to seeking the entry. All right, as we watched the video of the installation of Sir Hicks, there were 3 knocks on the door for entry into the ecclesiastical world from the secular world. Okay, very important we understand that. All right. So as we see the polarities, it says Archbishop installation. The Archbishop installation consists of knocking at the cathedral doors. Okay, how many times do they knock? They knock what? 3 times. Is also parallel to the seeking of admission in Freemasonry, which they consist of knocking on the lodge's door, which consists of what? 3 knocks. Okay, very important to comprehend the craftsman, ecclesiastical, as well as the secular purpose of the hammer. Okay, very important. Let's see, because it's a ritual act, a ceremonial act, a customary act. As we see Hicks perform when he walked into the church in New York, and he's an archbishop in Newark. New York. Okay, so it says the ritual act knocked 3 times on the cathedral doors using a gold-colored tack hammer. The ritual act knocks for Masonic lodges as a ritual act. They knock 3 times on the lodge door using a ceremonial gavel. Okay, it's also used in regards to what we call judicial review. Okay, judicial review. It's focused on acts beyond legal authority to Title 46:2. All right, and New Jersey Statute 6:1-28, based upon our authority, which is linked to our capacity, excluded from religious or ecclesiastical or hierarchical broad narratives. Okay, and the application is based upon it being secularized or decentralized. Is based upon the evaluation of whether corporate actions, i.e., within your capacity, within your scope, comply with statutes or ecclesiastical law and within the bounds. Okay, but outside those bounds, those acts are considered ultra virus. Okay, they are considered ultra virus beyond their statutory scope or power. Let's move forward. The judge's knock, which is typically performed with a gavel, is a direct evolution of the ceremonial and fraternal traditions, serving as a secular, hear that, echo of spiritual entry and order we just described in what we just said at the starting of this lecture. 1. Origins and Masonic authority. Historians note that while gavels are ubiquitous in American courtrooms, they are largely absent in English and Commonwealth courts. Their American popularity is widely attributed to the influence of Freemasonry on the United States founding fathers. The master gavel is a Masonic lodge. The master uses the gavel to command order and signal the transition between different stages of what? A ritual. The judicial gavel, just as the Masonic gavel, rules the lodge. The judge knocks establishes the authority of the court over the assembly, transforming a room of individuals into a singular, ordered legal proceedings. All rise. 2. The connection between the ritual taking of possession. The ritual of taking possession. We mentioned that the archbishop knocking to signify entry, a judge knock at the start of a session serves as a similar threshold function. So they are similar. Establishing a sacred space, tenured office capacity. The knock officially opens the court, signaling the space has changed from a public room to a sanctuary of law. Y'all better listen. Finality and transition. Just as the Son of Light knocks to seek a new state of being, i.e., baptism, i.e., being washed in a new vessel, okay? The judge knock often signifies the finality of a transition, whether it is the start of a trial, the passing of a sentence, or an adjournment of a court, i.e., declaratory injunctive relief. That for us is called baptism in law, okay? 3. Moral refinement. Moral refinement, the rough stone. In Masonic tradition, the gavel is a working tool used to break off the rough edges of a stone to make it fit for a building. Remember, in order for you to be clean, you got to wash off that dirt. All right? This involves cutting off the dirty edges or the rough edges or the bad spots that inflict us. Okay? Very important. That's the purpose of coming into the temple. This is the purpose of coming into the religious association, okay? To come into a vessel where you can cleanse yourself by realigning your mind with the purpose and intent of the mission, which is based upon your capacity, which gives you authority to act as a son of light, not as a son of darkness. That would be the secular world, all right? So the candidate knocks to begin the process of what? Self-improvement, okay? Self-improvement. The judicial connection, the judge knock represents the force of consciousness, and the power of the law to smooth out the chaos of human disputes into a structured, civilized resolution. This is called the decentralization of our ecclesiastical law and to secular law through a court of law. You hear that? Very important. They have comparisons, but they're not the same. All right, move a little further. We can skip that. So we know that symbolism denotes to moving from darkness to light, moving from chaos to order. Result, taking canonical possession, establishing the finality of the law. Very, very, very important. Let's go into this now. You know what? I'm actually going to stop, and I'll let y'all thirst up on this life-giving water from the 2 hours that I spent with you, or some of the hours I spent with you, and get you prepared for part 7. Okay? Get you prepared for part 7. So understand, that's page 13. Sure, I remind that. So remember, this is the transition, y'all. As Anglo-Saxon Berbers here in America, we have to act off that divine authority, and we know that authority is the statute, okay? That's God, that's our Lord's grace that governs the jurisdiction, which is the territory that we reside in, okay? And by going to these courts, and by getting the statutory analysis based upon our declaratory and injunctive relief, we are able to declare ourselves a lawful vessel by being washed in that holy water, okay? The holy water that comes from the corporation soul, okay? That comes from the corporation soul that now changes that natural person into a spiritual person, which they call in natural law or modern day law as a legal fiction, okay? To transition us from our state of non-capacity, okay, which the capacity still exists, we're just not acting in it because we don't know the authority, okay? Our ancestors did here in North America. So in order for you to regain that and to be able to revert that capacity back to its fullest authority, you must understand the mission, Okay? You must understand the mission because, as it said, the corporation soul is the vessel and the mission is the water. Okay? And if you align yourself with the mission, then you will regain your authority, i.e., your capacity to maintain the continuity of our capacity as officers and our natural or corporate capacity, all right, to make sure that we maintain the continuity of the possession of our state based upon that stability or stable statute forces going to do that's true. Any act outside of that will be considered ultra-virus and void ab initio. Okay? So once again, you have a choice to make, brothers and sisters. You have a choice to make. So with that, I'm going to greet you as I always greeted you. And that will be the state of our ancestors' capacity